All right. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. My name is John Field. I'm a director of product management here at Message Gears, and I am joined by Taylor Jones, who is our senior director over solutions. How are you doing today, Taylor?
Not too bad about yourself.
I'm doing pretty well in this warm summer down in Atlanta. For those of you where summer hasn't hit yet, it has certainly hit down here. And we're going to talk to you a little bit today about being an email storyteller. The reason that we wanted to talk with you about this today is that we see an industry where we can certainly improve as storytelling from a marketing perspective. We think it's one of the important things to do is to have storytelling be part of your marketing materials. So today we wanted to sort of tell you why we think that. We wanted to give you some good examples of what does storytelling look, especially for an enterprise brand, because a lot of our customers are large brands or enterprise brands, so they don't have some of the leeway that maybe a smaller brand does when it comes to being able to experiment with storytelling. And so that can be exciting, but it can also be difficult to do. And so once you sort of understand at a high level how you tell brand stories through email, being able to translate that into, I'll say, your day-to-day emails, right? You probably already have your welcome campaign. You already have your offer confirmation. You've already got your weekly newsletter. Being able to integrate what we're telling you today into those things and move from being what we would say is more offer-centric down to what's more story-centric.
So this is the way that too many brands approach storytelling. It's all about the brand. It's the brand story. It's, as you mentioned, it's always offer-centric. And it's not necessarily about the story of the individual, but at the end of the day,
it is about the individual. It's not really about your brand. It is your company as part of the construct of the story, but the goal of the story is actually to create a connection with your customer. It's to have you integrate with their story, have them want to tell their friends about using your brand or what your company has helped them do, but you're not the star of that. Your customer tends to be the star of it. And so it's easy to get excited about telling the stories and what have you, but we've got a disclaimer that before we go any further, that no amount of story writing works unless you understand who you're talking to. You really need to make sure that you understand your audience first in a big group. What do they largely look like? What are the people who are attracted to you? Who does your message currently resonate with? Why do they come and listen to you already? What do they look like? But you can't just stop there.
You've also got to go to the individual. So when you think about the individual, it's how do they fit into your story? How do you fit into their story, excuse me? And then what type of emotion are you looking to evoke from each of those individuals? And then how does that fit into the larger context of the group?
Mm-hmm. And so in order to be able to do that well, on both the group level and the individual level, you really have to learn about your hero. And this probably is the most important step. You've got to give it the time and energy it requires, because if you don't get this right, then whatever you are trying to do in your story, it just doesn't matter as much. So no guesswork. The user research is a must. And so we've put some questions out here about things like, how do your users or your customers see themselves? And what part of their lives do they want to improve with your company? Is it part of their work life? Is it their home life? Is it their hobbies? Like, where are they trying to make a difference with your products? And then what might that mean for the stories that you choose to tell with them? And then also thinking about, how have they been feeling before either visiting your site or signing up from your mailing list? Is it one where they've been feeling confused? Have they been feeling frustrated because they've been doing something that they haven't been doing? Or maybe they've just been feeling bored, and part of the reason that they're signing up with you is to bring new experiences to them. And then think about how are they hoping those feelings change by using your product or service. So if you sort of spend that much time not just thinking about, but looking into and doing the research on what they're feeling before and after, you now sort of have a conduit of this is what they're feeling before, this is what they're feeling after, and that conduit in between is really what lays a foundation for being able to tell your stories at a broad level, but then also being able to tell your story at a small level, because personalization is going to be really, really important. And it's one of the outcomes of being able to learn about your hero. Because what you're probably going to find as you go in and you do this research is that even though there are some broad sweeping things you can say about everybody, one size definitely doesn't fit all.
So that leads us to the question: when your customers think about their story, is it more impactful because of your company? Are you endearing yourself to the customer through your messaging? So, is your branding, the story that you're kind of conveying to the customer, is that merging and fitting into their individual story? That's what you've got to figure out as a company.
Yeah, and there's certainly companies that do this very well. I think Apple does a very good job of it, and they have for a long time. The ethos around Apple and the dedication they have for their fan base is because their fan base largely sees themselves as creators. And so the creator ethos is definitely part of how Apple tells its story, because when someone sits down to use an Apple computer, it's part of their creative process in a way that a lot of other brands haven't been able to kind of build in. And so when you look at the Apple advertising, you certainly can see that evolve over years. Even thinking back to like the I am Mac, I am PC commercials, you had a neat story kind of evolve from there. But we are going to take a look at some stories today that are really good examples of storytelling that's already out in the industry.
Is this some new high-tech startup out there?
Actually, no. There probably are great other technology companies like Apple that builds that in, but we're actually going to talk about the insurance industry today, because for those of you that are based in the US, you've probably seen a number of really good insurance stories that come out, because, I mean, let's face it, kind of figuring out how to sell insurance is not an easy thing, and so they've done a really good job of having different stories. And so we're first going to start by talking about Progressive, and we're going to talk about Flo. And Flo is a lovable character. She's a heroine who follows a very typical story arc, where she's a heroine who encounters obstacles and is able to overcome obstacles to kind of make it to a new level of everybody being happy with their insurance. And what is the tool that she uses?
The Name Your Price tool.
The Name Your Price tool. Like when we were pulling this together, we did not have to Google that. Like everybody knew exactly what the name of the tool was. And so part of that, this is an ad campaign that's run for the better part of 10 years. So they're certainly, continuing to get a lot of life out of it. But in following Flo, like, you want to cheer for her. I want to cheer for her. I want her to have good days at work where she's doing what she is enjoying doing. And so one of the subtle parts of this campaign is that by becoming a Progressive Insurance customer, you're actually joining Flo's tribe. And she's very relatable, and so that's a really good thing. So moving on to Farmers Insurance, they tell stories a very different way. They tell stories based on the real life interactions of their customers. So they'll tell a story about one of their customers whose dog got in the car and who took it out of park and started driving it and caused insurance. And thankfully the poor dog wasn't hurt. But then they always end the commercial by giving the date that happened, and
we've covered it.
And so the thing that I love about this is they are using the story of their customers to be able to, explain who they are, explain what they do. And there's a really subtle narrative in here, which is that, if they've covered the really extreme stuff, then of course, when you get your binder fender bender, they're going to be able to cover that too. And so it works really, really well. And finally, we couldn't talk about story and insurance commercials without talking about Allstreet and Mayhem. Love Mayhem. So Mayhem is a really interesting commercial line because, the story is all about him really neat character that they have there. And now us as the commercial viewer, we are all the hapless victims of mayhem, right? So we're driving along and we're doing the right stuff. And then Mayhem, who's checking his phone when he shouldn't be, he should be driving. I love the glasses on top, right? Because he's playing a character that obviously doesn't align with the rest of his costume. But then he's going to crash into us because he hasn't been paying attention. And so in this case, Allstate is able to come in and save the day because Allstate
protects us from mayhem like that.
Exactly. Allstate protects us from mayhem. And so that's one where it's like it brings you into the commercial as much as anything else. So you've seen three really good examples of story and how they incorporate story, right? One of the ways is sort of the most traditional with Flo, where it's, she follows a very heroine kind of typical or hero cycle of overcoming obstacles. You've seen telling stories about your customers, and that relates to who you are. And then you've also seen being able to bring your audience into the story and then feel the stability and protection of being part of this customer base.
So that's all great, but you're probably thinking, how does this apply to my messages? How do I bring in the larger kind of story for the tribe? How do I bring that into my content? And then how do I go further and start individualizing the messages for each of my individual user stories? So that instead of, us kind of pushing the brand, we're instead building into their existing story.
That's right. So what we want to do is we want to talk to you about I'll say the two main parts of the email. We want to talk to you a little bit about the subject line and what you can do there to drive a more story-focused approach. And then we're going to talk about the body of the email and kind of sum up some of the things that you can do there. And so in the subject lines, the best thing I can tell you is it's not all about you. So for instance, I wouldn't start by saying, hey, flights to Mexico are 20% off. I mean, that's great that they're 20% off, but what you might want to try is something that does two things. Is one, it starts off by focusing on the person receiving the email to say, you, and then can travel to Mexico for less. So it's instantly sort of associated it with me. I'm assuming that this email would be only sent to people who have shown interest in Mexico. So now I've shown interest in it. I'm visualizing myself there. And then the for less, it's not just that it's on sale, which is great, but what would be even better is if you knew that I tended to buy things that were on sale, right? Because some people, they identify themselves as savers. My wife is one of those people. When my wife goes shopping, she comes back and tells me about how much money she saved and not how much money she spent, because part of, her story is being very fiscally responsible. And so if you were able to, maybe customize these messages where it's like, you can travel to Mexico for less, or you could say, you can have a premium experience in Mexico if, for instance, the person always upgrades, their deals. And so even if you've got the 20% sale on, maybe that's not the thing to market them. Maybe you want to market to something where it sort of ties into their story a little bit better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've probably noticed there's a number of different tools out there that are designed specifically for this type of emotional response. So they'll kind of optimize it to see if we can drive the expected response out of each individual user. So the next one we've got here is, don't check out our new exercise product. A lot of people don't enjoy having to get up and work out anyway. Now you're kind of reminding me that I'm investing more money into this, and it's kind of, it's a pain. Instead, phrase it as, your exercise routine is about to get a lot more fun. So all of a sudden you're showing me, hey, something that I may not enjoy doing every day can be better. And here's a cool way to kind of optimize that experience for myself. So that makes it a lot more enjoyable. And again, it continues to kind of relate that you understand my story as brand.
Yeah, and then finally, an example out of my own inbox. I got this message recently. I had a $100 statement credit, and I got to decide, when and how to apply it. And don't get me wrong, that's great news. I'm excited to get $100, and it had a few other things in it. But it's like, what if they had sort of tried to take a different route with that? Of you deserve an upgrade, or let's talk about what kind of experiences could I have that I might want to tell somebody else about that I don't have to pay for because I can apply this $100 to that. Like it's much more enticing for me to be able to think about like what I can do with that $100 as opposed to like, hey, you know, you've got $100, which once again, not a bad thing, but it could have been better. So moving on to the body, I think there's three things that you can do inside of the body to really continue to use the emails to tell story. And so one of them, which we were just talking about in the subject line as well, is use the text, use the content, the imagery to communicate the benefits to the hero and not the features, right? Don't advertise that, you know, now we have, you know, a workout system that is 30% more effective. Like advertise where you're going to be when you've completed that workout system, right? What does your body look like? What are the benefits that you have once you've done that? How do you feel about yourself? All those things are so much better than sort of communicating the benefits of that particular workout system. You can also show customers what their lives look like once they take action. You know, so the travel companies tend to be great at this kind of thing, right? And it's not just travel companies, it's companies like Corona as well. Like I think about those Corona commercials, and if I just stay quiet for a second, I can hear the seagulls chirping, I can hear the waves coming in, and I can see from my own perspective, sitting in my cabana, what it looks like to be on that vacation. They do a wonderful job of being able to, you know, show people what that looks like once they've sort of accepted and started to participate in your brand story. You know, and finally, you can show how your current customers are already winning. You know, so for the people who have a success story with your product, I used to be in this state, then I used their product, now I am in this state. Like that inherently is a success story where that individual person overcame an obstacle. And so I can look at them and be like, hey, I'm like that person. I think I could have that kind of success. And that's a really good way, you know, rather than like saying we have these features or we have these benefits, to even be able to say, what would it look like for me to be able to be in that situation? So we wanted to take those strategies and kind of bring it down into tactics. And so we have an internal brand that we use here for our demonstration purposes called City and Glory. They are an urban furniture store. They're going to kind of target themselves to the, I'll say, 25 to 35 year olds that are inside of a city. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to walk you through the welcome email and how you can make your welcome email more than just thank you for signing up for our mailing list. We wanted to show you how you can help your order confirmation incorporate more story, because an order confirmation, a delivery confirmation is certainly beyond just a receipt. If you use it the right way. And then finally, you know, show you how you can incorporate story into your weekly newsletter, and then ways that you really can take it to the next level. And so Taylor's going to hop into our demo environments and show us what this looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk a little bit about execution. All right, so here we have an example of the City and Glory welcome email. So this one, it's not just sending out a thank you for signing up message. It's going through and actually trying to reinforce the lifestyle of someone who's now embraced our products and our branding. So we can see someone here enjoying one of our products, sitting there enjoying the smell of rosemary and a fermented coffee as well, fully embracing the kind of the life cycle and story of that individual user. We can go down a little bit, we'll see a little bit more about our brand, and we give someone the ability to now kind of interact and work to convey a little bit more about their individual interests. So we've got some examples of the different living spaces that someone might be interested in, and some different styling as well. So as they go through this welcome message, they're getting a little bit of our story, we're kind of hoping to fit into theirs, and then we're garnering a little bit of information about what they may be interested in to learn more about our brand and offerings. And then if we go down a little bit further, we may want to actually go in and add a little bit of a carrot to entice some additional interaction here. So if we come in and maybe we just want to drop in a new offer for those who qualify for it. See if this comes through in a second. Still there. Excuse me 1 second. Here we go.
So while this is coming back up, the thing I really like about this is that, the City and Glory could have easily started their welcome email by making their furniture front and center. But they didn't, right? City and Glory choose to first build a direct connection with the user by having him at the top of the page, as opposed to like, oh, here's what our product is.
Absolutely. And so now that we've got our offer information in here, we may want to go through and kind of conditionalize this only for recipients who haven't actually executed on this offer yet. So we'll come in, make sure that it's still available, and that information only gets displayed for those who qualify.
That's really cool. So I love that we start with the, here is how we humanize the brand. Here's how we start telling our story. Then we have the section where it's kind of focused on finding out more. So if people click on living or dining, right, we're going to remember that. And then we're going to use that to customize their stuff going forward. And then look, some people are definitely going to sign up for the mailing list because they're hoping for that initial offer. And so there's nothing wrong with incorporating offer into this email, but you can see that we've just done it in a way that it's not the focus of the email. And if they're not eligible for the offer for whatever reason, they're not even going to see it, right? Because you wouldn't want to like show it to everybody and then, sorry, you don't qualify. That wouldn't be a great experience either.
So next, now that we've got them excited about the brand from our welcome message here, next let's go into a delivery confirmation. So again, for a lot of people, this is kind of a transactional message, but we're hoping to use this to continue the story. So we want to fit both, we want our kind of brand imaging to come across. We also want to make sure it identifies with the individual story. So the first kind of piece of that is a little bit of humanization around who's going to be delivering the furniture, when it's going to arrive, because again, we want to make sure that we fit into the individual's day and into their specific story. So we can go down a little bit further and we'll see, hey, what did you purchase? So you can see the information about what's going to be delivered. But then kind of a key component is, as we're trying to fit into their story, we want to make sure that we know when this is going to be delivered, so that they, like you probably expect, waiting for furniture to be delivered may not be the most exciting part of your day.
No.
So instead, we give them the opportunity, here's when it's going to be delivered, and here's a few local events around the area that you may be interested in. So this might have the opportunity to drive them towards our store. So if you can bring them out of that area, maybe you get somebody to revisit. But B, there are opportunities that they can work with around the idea of that same kind of scheduled delivery time.
Yep. I absolutely love that. And I love how you're kind of diving in and you're telling a story. I mean, almost like, even if you kind of go back up to the top there, focusing on, hey, this is coming to you. And of course, City and Glory only uses bicycle courier to be able to get their furniture around. And so it's personalized, where it's like Clyde is going to be the guy that's dropping it off. And so even though, it's a very impersonal interaction, right? It's not one where it's like Clyde and I are going to develop a friendship, for instance, but it is still comforting to know what to expect and when to expect it, but then be able to kind of bring the personality of the brand in there as well.
Well, and you've got to think about execution too when you're thinking about these. So you've got the storytelling aspect. We also want to make sure that it looks good. So if you send these out, you want to be able to kind of come in, preview them, make sure they look good both on a desktop, or if you've got someone responding on a mobile, make sure it's responsive in the way you expect. And again, you want a good close-up of Clyde so that you can go through, see what he looks like, and then when it's going to arrive.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, cool. So now let's talk a little bit about, I'll say, the newsletter. And, sometimes this is aligned on weekends. But, for City and Glory, maybe it's not even aligned on weekends, right? Because we're an urban furniture company. And so not everybody is off on Saturday and Sunday. I mean, for people that work on the restaurant industry, that's like their biggest days of the week.
Well, and you're right. And so some of these you want to come in, again, we're leading with our branding, but hopefully in a way that fits in with that user story. So it's a little bit about us, where we came from, but then we come in a little bit further, and based on what we know about the individual, based on, kind of, I'll say the real-time conditions, think about weather and other aspects around it. We can come in and start presenting some different ideas for them about what they might want to do this weekend. Could it bring them out closer to our store again? Of course, it's a good idea to bring those and try to correlate them, but we also want to make sure that we're sensitive to the individual story. So as we go through, we've kind of got some examples here. So for someone who lives in Atlanta, we've got a couple of different destination events that, because the weather's beautiful today, we'll bring those people out. As you go into some other areas, maybe we're sending that same kind of pre-weekend newsletter out to Boston, but if they've got a snowstorm going on right now, we don't want to try to drive them out. So instead, we're kind of personalizing the content just to keep them at home and say, hey, here's some good ways to support local business and also kind of give back to the local community. And we can go further. You can walk through some other cities where you're getting just kind of customized examples around it. But a really cool idea is the ability, if someone has a pending delivery, to just go ahead and embed that information directly into this notification so that they're getting that kind of, I'll say subtle reminder that they've got a delivery out. And then again, you can kind of correlate the events that you're proposing to them around that delivery time.
Absolutely. So I love this example. So if you scan down a little bit, being able to say, oh, the local event, yeah, there's like a bike activism night, right? Where you're not going to sit there and say, hey, there's a music festival going on that you can't see because you got to be at home for your delivery between 3 and 4. Like that's just, your systems aren't working well together, and that would be a little bit of a downer. But like when you really can have everything go together, right? Maybe you can offer, hey, there's a coffee or there's a farmer's market going on that morning, plenty of time to get back by 3 o'clock. You get your furniture, you go out for bike activism, and you're good to go.
Fitting within the story. And I mean, it's an important idea when you think about the larger story and then the individual story. It's important to kind of make sure you know everything about that individual to make sure you've crafted the story in the right way.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so wrapping up a little bit for today, we wanted to leave you guys with next steps because I know that we've covered a lot, and so sometimes it can just help to say, okay, so once I take my headphones off and I kind of get back into my normal day, like how can I get started with this? And what I would tell you to do is to really get started by trying to articulate your brand story in your own words. Make sure that you're able to say, for our brand, here's how we want to integrate into people's lives, and then do the same thing to try to articulate the stories of your customers and prospects for how are they hoping your brand integrates in their lives. What does the connection look like between your brand and your customers? And then I would tell you to sort of start by taking a look at your current communications, right? We've talked a lot about offer-centric versus story-centric. Go and take a look at that welcome email and not just sort of score the whole email in terms of how offer-centric or story-centric it is, but in what order are you presenting things? Are you first hooking them with story, or are you first sort of explaining who you are and what benefits they can have? And then I would tell you to even go so far as to evaluate your current internal terminology and mindset. If you said, oh, this person's interested in skiing, well, an interest is, it's kind of what it is, but it feels like a database field for a profile, and good stories aren't necessarily based on database fields. But if what you say is, this person enjoys taking luxury ski vacations in Colorado, like now you've got a story around it. Like I bet if I sat down with that person, they would want to tell me about their ski vacations in Colorado, where if they just had an interest in skiing, that's just not as exciting, and it doesn't lend itself to kind of being as story focused.
Yeah, so the next one is to evaluate your tool set. So we've shown some ideas around how personalizing a message can really contribute to the individual story. So we're building it around the idea of a larger tribe story, and then also the idea of each individual's. And you have to have full access to everything you know about that individual to make sure that your messaging fits into their story, and also the ability to execute on those ideas when you have them. So as you're thinking about the tools that you're using, there's a lot out there, everything from kind of subject line optimization to building the actual content of the message. You've got to have the right platform to get there. And the next step is start small. So look at that welcome campaign to get started. The welcome campaign is your first jumping off point into the story. It's the first time you interact with the user. They're most engaged at that point. So start there, put together the story, and then kind of continue on through your other programs to make sure that they're continuing what you expect to convey as part of that user story.
Yep. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to make these slides available online if you're interested, and we would love to come out and talk to you. So we're actually going to be in DC tonight at the Future of Email event. Tomorrow night we'll be in Boston. On Friday, July 6th, we're going to be back to do a live product demo to sort of show you more in depth, not just what we do from a content standpoint, but what we can do to sort of work with live data to help you make this type of individualized storytelling possible. We'll have on Tuesday, July 31st, is our next monthly webinar focused on operationally efficient marketing. And on Tuesday, August 7th, we're going to be at the Future of Email event here in Atlanta. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you're having a great summer. Take care. Bye-bye.